Daylight savings, it's happened. Again, I'm kind of on board with the, let's get rid of it. Because it was done for the farmers as a way to, expand hours, daylight, all that planning season. That made sense. But that's not really a problem that we have anymore.
This is true. I personally, this is not a well-researched position. I'm just a night owl, and I love having an extra hour of sunlight at night. And I have good friends that feel the opposite. They hate when daylight saving starts, and they wake up in the morning and it's dark outside. But I love having sunlight later in the day.
No, I do too. Okay, this is going to be really naive, but what if we didn't have the time change at all? Would we have what we're currently scheduled, or would it be
you're tapping into a debate, actually, because if you were to get rid of daylight savings, are you falling back on standard time, or are you keeping the status quo with daylight saving time? And it's been argued both directions, I believe, but there are actually scientific data or research to talk about one being better than the other and the effect that it can have on your body. So there are real arguments around this, definitely, one direction or the other. I think a lot of people are maybe on a surface level tapping on what you're saying, Virginia, of we just don't want our clocks to change.
Yeah.
Let's just keep it the same the whole year.
Yeah.
But there actually is a whole debate happening around the effects around whether it should be standard or daylight.
I'm a fan of what we have right now, that clocks have just changed. Now it's light an hour later. It's great. Like you said,
you don't want to fall back.
I don't want to fall back. I just want to move forward, guys.
I have no position on this whatsoever. I don't care.
Really?
I really don't. I mean, it is nice when the sun's, we have 7 p.m. sunset. That's amazing, right?
Yeah,
so
incredible.
Can, go golf after work if I really want to. But
so cute.
This is not an issue that I really care about. And when I think daylight savings, I think National Treasure and how that whole thing in the second or maybe the first movie. But I loved Trump's solution to this, which was just do 30 minutes at the beginning of the day and 30 minutes at the end of the day and just leave it. Let's not fall back or spring forward. Let's just shift it a little bit.
Oh,
compromise.
So the one clock change that will end all clock changes.
That is hilarious. That is really funny. Well, Janae, we are so glad to have you back. It has been a while since you have been with us.
It has been,
on the show. And
love being on, though. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Well, Janae, you serve as Vice President of Outreach and Advocacy, both for Heritage Action for America and for the Heritage Foundation.
Correct.
You stay busy.
I do, yes.
Stay very busy.
Very, very busy.
Which is part of the reason why it's been a while since you've been on. But thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely.
This is going to be a real joy and a lot of fun.
I'm excited. I'm Kristen Eichhammer.
And I'm Virginia Allen. And for those who are joining us for the first time, every week on Problematic Women, we take the time to sort through the news to look at those stories that are of particular interest to conservative-leaning, or as we say, problematic women. So if you're joining us on YouTube, thank you for sitting down with us. Grab yourself a cup of tea, join the conversation. If you're joining us on Rumble, thanks for finding us there. And if you're listening across podcast platforms on Thursday or later in the week, thanks so much for tuning in. We will be playing a couple clips and things throughout. So we always say, hey, if you want that video component, check us out on YouTube or Rumble. But we so love having you guys with us wherever you are listening.
Yeah, you can also see our outfits each week, which I think is the most important.
You can also see our outfits. Really, definitely the most
feedback.
Important. Oh, I was just telling Janae, I was like, I have to get black out of my closet just a little bit more. I need more color. I realize I wear a lot of black.
Or you can really lean into the Steve Jobs approach.
Or just go full on.
No decision making in the morning.
All Same outfit every Wednesday.
It's spring and I'm here in black and white. It's okay. We'll get there. I guess technically it's not spring yet.
Yeah, you've got some time.
We have 2 weeks.
Yeah, we just sprung forward.
So this just means I have to go shopping. Okay. Conclusion drawn.
Always a good reason to go shopping. There's always a good one. But okay, so it's March, and that means we are in Women's History Month.
Yes.
But I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. There's this Twitter fad kind of, but I saw it more directly in an article that's calling March the month of feminine rage.
Oh,
and yes, Trump is president and we are back to feminine rage. I didn't see it too much, in any official capacity, but a ton of influencers are talking about this, and what they're referring to is the book Rage Becomes Her: The Power of Women's Anger. And that actually was written in 2018, kind of took off with this idea that women are so focused on being quiet and polite that they constantly suppress their rage, and in doing so allow the system, right, that is restraining us,
aka Trump,
to take over. And so I'm just going to translate something for you that in this article they point out. They say, someone will ask a woman how she feels, and she'll respond, "I'm tired." That doesn't mean that she's tired. Like, it doesn't mean she's tired. It actually means I'm exhausted from having to constantly restrain or hide my fury. And when I read that, I was like, this is not real life. Like, what is this? So, I mean, I think it's important to point out too, like, this book was written in 2018. Black Lives Matter has happened since then. The Me Too movement was just before then, and some interesting political pressures. But what is our thought about this feminine rage?
Oh, this is just the left's most recent iteration, I think, of an excuse of, hey, we're so upset by, protecting life in the womb, or by traditional values resurfacing.
Manly men.
By manly men having this pushback on this movement to really demasculine. Yes, there we go.
It's eyes.
Men. And so, the feminist movement, it's gone through so many different iterations over the years, over the decades. We always celebrate what kind of the original feminist movement was and the values that it stood for, but then it just has so quickly after that really became, I think, this. It became this kind of rage against the man, rage against traditional values. And it's left us with a pretty hollow message, a message of, if you're a woman, just kind of be angry. And I think it's missing the uniqueness and the beauty of who women really are, who God created us to be. And we do have a lot of emotions. Like, women have a lot of emotions, and that's okay. And sure, rage can be one of them, but that in no way defines who a woman is.
Yeah. You've committed a ton of your career, I feel like, to women's issues. And I mean, even in your HAFA capacity, it's obviously been a big few years. Was rage what fueled you?
No, not at all, actually. I mean, perhaps righteous anger at times. But yeah, I find it embarrassing, honestly. But when I can stop being embarrassed and zoom out a little bit, it actually just makes me deeply sad, because I think that these liberal women are angry. I think that they, as you said, Virginia, that it's hollow, and I think that they don't have any joy in their life, despite Kamala's pleas on her desperate final pleas on her campaign trail of joy, that they were trying to force it out. But joy is not from a circumstance. Like, you can't just pull that out of thin air, and it's like happiness. But joy comes from the Lord and from a foundation. And I think women are winsome and skilled, and we're so much better than just rage. Like, rage to me is like a wrecking ball, and their whole strategy here is to just dedicate a month to being angry. And when has that ever worked? When has that ever won people over? When they're not gaining votes with that. They're not even furthering their own cause. So from a tactical strategy, I would say this is just foolish. They've tried it. It's not worked. It is not winsome. And from a reality standpoint, I'm actually deeply sad for them.
Yeah, I think you just hit on a perfect point. Like, we are better than rage, right? It's not. When I think of effective tools to persuade audience, I don't think yelling into a microphone or swearing in public, which just happened a few weeks ago with all of the government, efficiency that we're seeing. But it's like you're telling women that rage is their best tool, when in reality they have so many others, including their wit, about them. And maybe I'm a little desensitized, and I'm not saying, bottle up your feelings and don't feel. Definitely do that. That's the healthy thing to do. But you don't need to go out on the street yelling at people. However, Blake Lively, if I could pivot, did not get the hint. She did it a little bit better. She didn't yell necessarily, but I want to talk about that next because we're on this theme of toxic femininity, and that's what I'm going to call it because really this rage is kind of toxic. It's not creating anything better. And for those of you who may not be keeping up, I have a timeline of events here, so bear with me. But
Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.
Yes,
here we
Blake
go.
Lively and Justin Baldoni, the two Bs, they have gone through a lot. Maybe you weren't here. We've talked about this on the show, though. It Ends With Us is how these two kind of started working together. It's a film written or based off of the book by Colleen Hoover, and it's actually a testament to her mother, who it has to do with domestic violence, and her mother experienced that, and so it's a way to honor her. And so we've talked about this, like I said, and how Blake kind of didn't embrace that theme. She more focused on the florals and the outfits, which was a little inappropriate and a little, distasteful, but whatever, we'll leave it at that. However, then the media started to blow up because she filed a complaint. And she filed a complaint against Justin Baldoni, accusing him of sexual misconduct. Yes, sexual misconduct. And she did that in California. And people were so confused. They were like, Justin Baldoni, he has this podcast focused on being man enough to listen to women and being not a toxic masculinity guy. And so people were just really, really confused. And then they started to kind of notice some trends with the press tour. So step back looking at the complaint. First thing, she accused Baldoni of talking about her weight, saying it was inappropriate, when in reality he was asking because of a scene where he was lifting her. Another instance was she accused him of coming into her trailer while she was breastfeeding, which just basically they were able to uncover that she invited him into the trailer while she was pumping. It wasn't lots of things. So they're noticing these lies because Baldoni is basically leaking some of the text messages and then goes on to file his own lawsuit a few days after she files her complaint, which is not a lawsuit. It's just a complaint. So different levels of seriousness. And that is when the whole story starts to spiral. And her little... honestly, it's a publicity stunt. It seems like kind of falls apart. She refers to Taylor Swift. She refers to her husband, Ryan Reynolds, and people start digging. The mommy bloggers, Candace Owens has been crediting with this because they're finding all of these inaccuracies. And then they start to look at her time while she was on Gossip Girl, A Simple Favor, and they're like, wait, Blake Lively's actually a mean girl. And a lot of people have basically found that she was bullying Justin Baldoni, taking over the product, becoming kind of a bridezilla, if you will, but for actors, and just ran with it, tried to, kind
of bulldoze
over him and ruin his career, which is not the first time she's done that. So toxic femininity, she is a perfect example of, have you guys been paying attention to this? I know that was 1,000-foot view and a lot of information I just threw you at.
Yeah, so you have definitely paid closer attention than I have. I have been playing catch up a little bit in the past 24 hours. My conclusion is that they are both guilty. That there is
she hates Hollywood.
That there's fault on the Blake Lively side and there's fault on the Justin Baldoni side. And my guess is that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think what happened here, if you go on a journey with me, is Blake Lively's like, okay, great, I got this movie coming out. It's going to target a feminine audience. It's about domestic abuse. I'm not super comfortable talking about domestic abuse, so I'm going to talk about my hair care line. I'm going to talk about florals. I'm going to be fun. I'm going to kind of be this person that everyone knows me to be, this very feminine, outgoing woman. Well, she starts getting a ton of blowback from that on the press tour. Because it's like, well, it's really not what this movie is about. It's about domestic abuse. And she starts essentially getting smeared for being very insensitive. Well, Justin Baldoni, on the other hand, is handling it beautifully, and he's talking about women, and he's building up women during this tour and the importance. And this ticks Blake Lively off a little bit because she's like, wow, he's getting a lot of positive press. I'm getting a lot of negative press. So it gives her a reason to maybe strike out at Baldoni a little bit, to get a little upset. Maybe there was already a little something there, some things he could have.
Some tension.
There could have been some tension. I'm guessing he's not completely innocent. He probably did say some inappropriate things on set. There are references to him, talking about his porn usage on set. That's probably very possible. That's, I'm guessing, often a topic that people talk about in Hollywood. Like, I don't know, but we know from the stats that the majority of men use porn. So It probably comes up in Hollywood. There's references to him bringing friends on set who are on set at maybe during scenes that were more sensitive for Blake Lively to be filming. That's also very possible. So he probably did do some things that were not great. And then Blake Lively kind of is like, well, I'm going to lean into that and I'm going to kind of smear him a little bit because I feel like my name is getting dragged through the mud with this. So I feel like there's issues on both sides. Neither of them handled it well. And it was already a high intensity, high emotional film. And I feel like that just probably added to the emotion, to the tension. They could also just be different people that, rubbing each other the wrong way. But I'm guessing there's a pretty equal 50-50.
I think I would agree with that a lot. I think that's probably a pretty good guess. I guess,
level-headed,
like never really know, or at least not at this point in time. But it feels like a fairly level-headed response. I think, as always with issues like this, it's usually the people in the middle that get caught. It's this is a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like a divorce, like mom and dad are fighting and who gets hurt? The kids. And I think in this scenario, it's victims of domestic violence that this book was supposed to highlight, the movie was supposed to highlight, and in many ways it almost just makes light of it. And I think, backing up to kind of a throwback campaign now, the Me Too campaign, that it really minimized the victims of sexual abuse, for all the women that were like, me too. And it's not to say that you haven't been catcalled walking down the sidewalk and that made you feel uncomfortable. A coworker said something inappropriate. That was weird. I'm not justifying those things or saying that those are okay. It's just so different than real abuse, real sexual assault that many, many women have actually experienced. And I think going back to this idea of women's rage, I think that our culture at large has become really sensitive about things, but particularly women, that like we've got a chip on our shoulder and we're looking for the ways people are hurting us. Like, oh, that made me uncomfortable. Okay, I'm gonna blow that up. I'm gonna make a big deal out of that. Other than just like finding grace within ourselves and addressing them head on without perhaps a big campaign to draw attention. And maybe the last point I'll make here is that this is maybe unfair for me to say, not really knowing what happened. I'm all about women standing up and being a strong voice for themselves. So perhaps something really happened and Blake is like, no, I'm going to be the strong woman that stands up and speaks out. That I think that will play out in court. But from all the information that is out there, and as you said, Kristen, all the mommy bloggers that are tracking this and like reading into things, it really seems like this is just Blake's way of getting a little bit more attention, even if there are fault on both sides. And I just find that so distasteful. Because I think that for women who really experience something harsh, disgusting, despicable, assaults, fill in the blanks, they often are so scared to speak out. And that we want them to be able to speak out, but I'm only highlighting that to say that Blake's reaction doesn't smack of someone who experienced something really traumatizing.
Yeah, and I mean that was what like you said, the book was originally about, and it was originally about an experience the mother had. I think that both of your analyses are great. A few things that were left out is her complaint in later lawsuit. So Baldoni filed the lawsuit, and then he actually filed one against both Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. And then Blake comes back and kind of manipulates her phrasing, alluding that at one point and using phrasing to make it sound like the content was explained and they subjected an underage person to it, when in reality it wasn't an underage person. It was an actor who was portraying an underage person. And for those of you who know the plot, there's two characters. Lily Bloom is the main character, and she has a younger and older version of herself. So that was manipulative. And then there's the Deadpool Ryan Reynolds ties, which I didn't really touch on because there's just so much to this. But if you go back and watch Deadpool, there's a few Easter eggs that people believe are him mocking Justin Baldoni. He was largely a part of this. And in Deadpool, there's a nice pool character. He's kind of an awkward beta male. He's got a man bun, and he's just super positive. He has like a little lap dog, and he says the craziest things. And I remember when I was watching this in the theaters, I'm like, this is the stupidest character I've ever seen. And spoiler alert, in the end, Lady Pool, who is played by Blake Lively, shoots and kills Nice Pool. And so a lot of people are like, were they mocking Baldoni in front of him? And did Blake just do the ultimate kind of,
Oh, wow.
I don't like you. So there's a lot to uncover. I love your honest takes with the limited information I gave you.
Yeah.
But if you guys want a deeper dive, Candace Owens does a great job. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to plug her show or not, but
why not?
She does a great dive. She has like 8 episodes on this because there's just so much out there that we can't cover in, this segment.
Yeah, there's so much on this.
Can I close with a hot take?
Sure.
Please.
It goes in line with what I was just saying. And Kristen, you're absolutely right. There's so much more to this. I know we're scratching the surface here and waxing eloquent on something that I certainly haven't done a deep dive on. My hot take is that even the book doesn't really do domestic violence justice. And this is just classic Hollywood. I mean, celebrities are just like us. They're people. And instead of airing their drama in their little friend circle, they're airing the drama for the entire world to see. And everybody's getting caught up in it. And I think it's just petty. And I think that the real life experiences that so many people have across this country are quite devastating, and they're not romanticized the way that they're romanticized in entertainment, whether it's a movie or a book. And certainly there are experiences like what Colleen wrote about, like you said, it's her mom's story. But so many domestic abuse situations, like they don't have options.
Yeah.
They don't have places to turn. And that's not, everybody's story is different. It's, there's grace for everybody's situations. But I think this is just Hollywood pettiness and
toxic femininity.
Yeah,
femininity.
exactly.
Got it.
Well, speaking of femininity that is not toxic,
Yes,
we're gonna
the good kind.
The good kind. The fight to protect women's sports is really, I feel like we keep just ratcheting up and up and up in intensity. And we've seen just some great breakthroughs in the Trump administration with Trump signing an executive order to protect female sports. But the thing that we've all recognized is that things change so fast. I mean, we think back 3 months ago and it was like, oh my goodness, the Biden administration is just pushing ahead with trying to redefine what male and female is and all these things. And just as quickly now, Trump's turned so much of that around, but that highlights the need to have Congress act and to have laws on the books that supersede any executive order and say, hey, only men can be in women's sports. I had the opportunity at CPAC at the Conservative Political Action Conference to sit down with Chloe Cole, and she talked a little bit about this and just this need that we're not done, that there's more fight on this space of whether it's women's sports, whether it's transgenderism, there's more that has to be done. Let's actually go ahead and roll this clip from Chloe because I think she just says it really well.
We need to continue fighting because there's so much ground left to cover. Yeah. We've only thrown the first punches at this movement.
Yeah.
And we need to continue until this is completely gone from our country, until no child, no woman, no man is being harmed by this.
So I love what Chloe has to say there. And that was when I sat down with her and was like, hey, what do you want to talk about? And she's like, the number one thing is people don't understand, like there's a lot more that has to be done. We haven't won this war completely. And we're seeing that play out because Congress last week, Democrat senators blocked a vote that would have blocked a vote on a bill that would have said men are not allowed to compete in women's sports. Very basic. I think I mentioned this on the podcast last week that 72% of voters in California think that men should not be allowed to compete in women's sports, according to the Napolitan Institute. So this isn't very controversial. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. This is just a common sense issue. And Janae, you just wrote a great piece about this and kind of where this fight stands for the Daily Signal. I mean, it's really wild to see how things are unraveling.
You said it best. This is a common sense issue. And honestly, saying no men in women's sports, I mean, that is just the surface of this issue. It goes so much deeper, but it's the easy common sense move, and it's putting girls' lives in danger. Honestly, we have the victims who have physical difficulties now because of having to compete against a man. Yeah. So, there was recently a New York Times poll as well. You're mentioning voters specifically in California, which, like you said, if California is there. Hello. But even the New York Times, which I believe was a national poll, said that 79% of people are against men in women's sports. 79%. And I also want to point out that when the New York Times was doing this poll, it's the New York Times. So the way that they write these questions and the bias, like the questions were asked is like, a trans woman is competing in sport. Like they're setting it up for the person taking the poll to say, oh, do I want to be against that? Yeah. And guess what? Still, 79%, that's almost 80%. And then of that, 67% were Democrats.
Wow.
And then you read a poll like that, and then you have the vote that you're talking about on the Senate floor. That was a party line vote. Not a single Democrat, not a single one voted for this common sense bill that their constituents obviously support and want. And then you see them wearing pink on the floor when Trump was giving his address to Congress. And they're wearing pink because they're trying to support the negative impacts on women and girls. And the disconnect that is there for them, that they are doing these, virtue signaling moments of let's wear pink, or the TikTok video that went viral of them embarrassingly, saying choose your fighter and like wobbling on the ground, hoping that they gain voters. I don't know. Yeah. You had an opportunity right in front of you to take a vote. That's what you're elected to do. That's why you're serving. If you want to be a fighter, go take a hard vote. And it really shouldn't have been a hard vote, because your constituents are telling you time and time again, we support this. It would have been very easy. And I think it only highlights that the Democrats are controlled by puppet masters. They don't have their own thoughts and opinions. They do not act independently. And it's a really unfortunate thing, but I hope that all of their constituents and what few voters they have left are paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add, like, that's got to be, there's a reason for that, for the party lines, and there's got to be either some big pharma donors or someone that's trying to keep, that's like totally speculation. George Soros, exactly. It's just insane, especially, I mean, this issue is more popular than daylight savings. So like,
it's huge. It's a unifying issue, actually. It's one that all Americans can say, hey, we agree on. It's just that there's such a loud minority that is very loud and is very aggressive. But standing for truth isn't easy. It takes, I'm going to choose to break with that really loud, aggressive minority, and I'll actually stand up for what the vast majority of Americans believe in.
And because it's such a small group of people advocating for this, what do they actually stand to lose? It's not voters. Their voters are not there. Their voters are in favor of this common sense, no men in women's sports for all the reasons that we could talk about, that I think largely are common sense. Their voters are there. So you have to ask yourself, they either are delusional enough that they fall into that small group of people saying, this is good, this is what I want, which their voters should pay attention to and say, is that who I want representing me? Because they don't align with me. Or they don't believe it at all, and they're just willing to do whatever the money tells them.
Yeah.
And voters should also be paying attention to that. If you do not have a Democrat member that can break from their party lines and do the right thing on such an easy vote as this, get them out. I all of America should be paying attention to this.
Yeah. Well, Janae, you mentioned that funny video that Democrats posted, the Choose Your Fighter video. Yes. We actually have that queued up. So Democrats put this out on TikTok. You just have to see it. best. I think AOC had the best little bounce.
But where was she? That was such a
She's probably,
weird
I don't
room.
know, like her parents' house or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I don't know, but the comments on these videos, I mean, they have been roasted from everyone.
Have they made
Jimmy
any
Kimmel
statements?
roasted them on nighttime TV on this.
That was so funny. No, actually, Rep Underwood, that's my home district, and I am really ashamed. I'm really, really ashamed. I am so sorry, Naperville. You don't deserve that woman.
I think this just shows that Democrats are actually not as worried as they say they are, because I'm like, if you were actually terrified of Trump and you were terrified of his policies and he was the worst thing to happen to America, you would not be putting videos like this on TikTok.
That's a good point.
Like, this just underlines the fact that, like, yeah, they're a little pissed and upset, but like, so they're gonna make little videos that look like they're the little tennis player on the Wii.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, if they're going from their day of rage and are screaming into the microphone, you know, it's always life or death for them, and you know, the world, the sky is falling, and this is just awful, awful, awful. If we were really in like doomsday, and then they're like, okay, done with that press conference. Now let's make a TikTok. I don't know. And it was like it smacks of the nurses during COVID in 2020, that, like, you know, the media is telling us that people are dropping dead like flies, and the hospitals are so stressful and so awful. And then you get online and you see videos of the nurses and doctors dancing to a TikTok, which takes time to make. Like, you don't just like throw that together. They had to choreograph it. And there just seems to be this disconnect for liberals. I think that's a really great point, Virginia.
It goes back to kind of, you know, when you apply for a job and you kind of maybe I've never done this, obviously, but when you embellish your resume and then you show up and they're like, all right, what's going on? It's a weekend, and you're
You
like,
speak Finnish.
Let's go. And they can't. And that's exactly what's happening here. They're making promises to their constituents. They're not listening to them when they have feedback. There's plenty of people in those offices. They have tons of money that are probably fielding tons of calls. I called my representative in Virginia because I was pissed about just what's been going on with women's sports. And everyone should, but like, they're still not listening. Even you could probably have...
They're very busy making TikToks.
They're so busy moving up and down. Like, what even was that? That wasn't even a creative one.
No, it wasn't. Actually, one of the funniest comments I saw was somebody said the worst part about this is that this was a trend from like 4 years ago.
Right. No,
they're so behind.
No, exactly. It's like, where did you get this from? And yeah, it's just feminine rage. Like, that is feminine stupidity. And I can't say that, but it is. It is.
I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah.
You know, I went to the page of the so-called influencer who first posted this and is in the video herself. And of course, she's, you know, she knows she's catching a lot of flack for this. They're all catching a lot of flack for this. And the post that she was putting up was basically like, I'm proud of this. I'm so glad that we're getting this attention, because that's the whole point. And it was actually so interesting. Again, kind of embarrassing, almost making it worse, but she's an influencer. Her only goal is to make content and to get more views and more clicks. So she was over the moon. She's like, and she literally said in a news interview, I think I've done exactly my job. Like, people are talking about this. Like, I don't care if it was embarrassing. I don't care. Like, that was the point. Like, we're getting clicks and views, and I'm, you know, paraphrasing, of course, but that was so interesting to me. I'm like,
but sure, from that perspective, she did do her job. Yeah. She got more eyeballs on it.
Yes. But and highlighting what her page, her income, and these Democrat women who have a job to do for their constituents instead are propping up views and clicks for an influencer.
Has anyone, I don't think we have the answer here, but I'd be very interested to see how followers have changed, or how for each of these representatives, to see if that's changed. That's actually been another thing that the Baldoni Lively has focused on. Like, Blake Lively has lost a ton of followers from the drama, while he's gained a bunch. I'd love to see if we could see a similar trend here. Because again, they did just have a huge vote, and then they did go wear pink. And like, your virtue signaling is not enough. Your actions are what is important. And TikTok's not doing it for me.
Well, for the action that Congress needs to be focused on, needs to be taking this week, there to say they're behind on budget is.
Are they ever on time with this?
They have never. I'm like, one day, maybe one day, Janae, they will be on time.
That's what we're working towards.
That's what we're working towards. But we have to talk about what the biggest story is in Washington, D.C. This week, and that is the fight over spending, the fight over budget. Right now, it is a continuing resolution to keep the doors of the government, to keep the lights on. So talk us through a little bit of just the complexities of spending, of budget fights in Washington, D.C. and kind of what is at the center of this conflict right now?
Yeah, so I'm the wrong person to get into the complexities of the budget, but we certainly have a lot of people in this building that could talk to you about that. However, from an activism and political strategy standpoint, so the government funding does expire this Friday, March 14th, and as your listeners may know from previous iterations of this, if there is not a new spending bill passed at that time, the government will shut down. And what happens when the government shuts down? Everything is on halt until a spending deal can be made. And so what we're proposing, what has been put forward is a clean CR. It would be a CR as a continuing resolution. And that would mean that the budget that was previously passed, which was passed under Democrat control. So certainly there are some concerns right there. But it would get us through to September.
Kind of maintains the status quo.
Correct. Exactly. And a clean CR, so it has taken out some of the extra fluff and bad, but it gets us through to September. And what this allows, the reason, normally it's not the first time we've been in a situation like this, but we're not proponents of a continuing resolution. We want Congress to do their jobs and to appropriate and pass a budget. But this is something that Speaker Johnson and President Trump and the administration have been in lockstep on. And that allows the administration to set everyone up for success. It allows DOJ to continue doing what DOJ is doing. So all of the cuts, what do we ultimately want the budget to do? We want the budget to make cuts. We want a balanced budget. We don't want to be spending money that we don't have as a country. And that is exactly what DOJ is working towards right now. It's being like, where is all of that waste? Exactly. Like, this is what the budget needs to be cutting out. And DOJ is doing that work right now incredibly quickly. And President Trump very much wants to continue that work. And he also wants the runway to set the country up for success and to set the next budget up for success. So what they have proposed is a clean CR that would get us through to September. I think that they'll be able to make that deal by the end of this week. It also puts Democrats in an uncomfortable position because they're usually on the other side of this. And now they have to either advocate for a government shutdown or pass this clean CR, which actually was a budget passed under Democrat control. So they're in a tough spot here. And I think that is ultimately is good for everybody, is good for President Trump to be able to continue the work that he's doing, for DOJ to be able to continue the work that they're doing, and see where it goes from there.
Now, Democrats, the main complaint that they're lauding against this right now is they're claiming this isn't a clean CR because it includes additional funding for securing the budget. And that's kind of for securing the border. Another B word. Securing the border.
Secured.
Yes.
Yeah.
Secure budget, secure borders. And that's obviously an issue that Trump has been so clear. This is a top priority. We're going to secure the border. And Democrats, again, an issue that is common sense across the country, but Democrats still seem to
once again, it should be
falling
an
behind
easy vote for them. Yes.
Yeah.
In many ways, as frustrating as it is, as we're trying to get things done and to clean things up in Washington, D.C., I kind of love when they expose themselves in this way. It's like, on the women's sports bill, it is appalling to me and quite unacceptable that not a single one of them could vote for that bill, but it exposes them. They want all their voters to pay attention. I would say the same thing about the border.
Yeah.
The border is another issue that Americans everywhere, overwhelmingly, the polling says that, the November election says that, people care about this issue deeply. So it's impacting their lives, it's impacting their communities, it's impacting the women and children that are being trafficked at the border. We could go on and on about the border issue. It is devastating. And if they want to put their stake in the ground on being against securing the border, by all means, they should go right to their constituents and let them know that that's what they're upset about.
Where they stand.
But where's like the female rage with all of that too, you know?
Right.
not to pivot back. No, seriously though, there's let's just look at the last week. The women's sports protections, you know, they didn't vote for that. They also didn't clap and stand for the Lake and Riley recognition, which who's suffering the most from non-secure border? It's women.
Yeah.
It's just like the the feminine rage, March feminine rage, it really should be focused at Democrats because they are the ones with the power to actually make a change. They are the ones that Americans are trying to count on. So Friday, I think it's going to be a long day, do you think? Or do you think, what do we expect?
Oh, man. Okay, you're putting me on the spot here.
Sorry,
No, it's okay. Don't apologize. I'm joking a little bit, but I'm certainly not the Hill expert.
Anything could happen.
Honestly, in DC, I have come to learn that like any prediction, even the experts, quite frankly, the people that work on the Hill, how many times have we heard a prediction and the exact opposite?
True.
So
Very
I've
hard to
come
predict
to
Congress.
predict the unpredictable, but I do think that this is going to get done by Friday. I think we have all the right leverage points to avoid a government shutdown. And like I said, I mean, this is good for President Trump and the work that is being done under his administration right now. And that was a clear mandate from the American people overwhelmingly in November. They want something different. They want President Trump and all of the representatives and senators that they elected as well to move forward with these priorities. And I think whatever sets President Trump and his cabinet up for success is a win. And I think they're going to get it done.
You hit it perfectly. Sorry, no, I just cut you off. But the White House, I think it was the White House, came out with a response video to what we just watched, whatever you want to call that.
Choose Your Fighter.
The Choose Your Fighter. And its response simply was America chose its fighter in November. And it was all of these amazing shots, action shots of
that's so good.
Trump and Melania and JD and Pete Hegseth. All of that is
doing
what
their jobs.
They chose their fighter. Now go do what that fighter wants to do.
Exactly.
Well,
right.
and I think one of the reasons, Janae, why you're right that I think they will get this done is because no party wants a government shutdown on their watch. Like it honestly, it doesn't affect Americans that much at all.
That's
like
right.
the vast majority of Americans will have no idea if the government is quote unquote shut down or not because life keeps moving on.
Right.
And it doesn't look super good for a party to say, okay, we were the ones that weren't willing to get behind the plan that was presented.
Right.
Ultimately, that's on us that the government shut down. Democrats don't want that. So because of that political pressure, in all likelihood, they're going to vote on this. They're going to meet that deadline, probably with some kicking and screaming.
Yeah, I think they're going to get the job done.
Yeah, they're going to get it done. Well, we're going to have kind of a fun question here in a second. But before we get there, would you share just a tiny bit about one of the hats you wear at Heritage Action for America? And there's some really neat ways that people can actually get involved with Heritage Action through the Sentinel program. Just tell them how they can learn more.
Thank you so much for asking me about that. I almost commented on it earlier when Kristen said that she called her Virginia representative upset about the women's sports issue. And I thought, yes, that's exactly what Heritage Action does. Our grassroots on the front lines, the tip of the spear, we call them Sentinels. Those are our army men ready to fight. And that's exactly what they do. They hold Congress accountable. When there's an issue, they let their representative know. What's so unique about Sentinel is that they're actually building a relationship with their lawmakers. So it's not just Joe Smith calling their office. I hope Joe Smith also calls the office. But it's somebody that lawmaker actually knows. And in some cases, they have their cell phone numbers and can call them, text them. So it's just more strategic activism. And at Heritage Action, we have state directors all across the country that help train those activists on here's the best way to start building that relationship and trust and rapport with them and their staffers. And, there are hundreds of ways to be an activist. Everybody comes with a little bit different flavor of what they're good at. Maybe they like to write, maybe they host events in their home. Some of them testify at their state capitals. So it really depends on what that person wants to give to the fight. But we would love to have all of your listeners join us as well. You can go to heritageaction.com/Sentinel to join. And we offer tons of resources. I mean, we're talking about the spending fight. Every Monday night, we have a strategy call with our Sentinels talking through the fight on Capitol Hill, and our GR directors, our executive vice president, some of our experts in the building on policies will join and talk through the step-by-step of what they think will happen and how we can be in the fight to hold Congress accountable.
Really powerful. I love it. Well, before we get to our fun question, want to thank one of our great viewers, Dominique Bender 4166 on YouTube. They had a great comment from last week's show with our guest Natalie Winters. Yeah. They commented, "Love this lady," referring to Natalie, of course. "I was blown away at her intelligence and poise. You go, girl. I love to see all of these brilliant young people taking the baton." So thank you for your comments. Thank you for all the great folks out there, all our viewers who have left us just such kind comments. We so appreciate you guys. But question of the week: what is one political or cultural trend that conservative women should be leading instead of reacting to? So a cultural or political trend that we want to see conservative women leading instead of just reacting to. I will put this on the Instagram account for you all to weigh in on. One that I think personally I need to do better on, hence the beginning of the show conversation, is that of fashion. Like I actually think that there's such a great space for conservative women to really lean into, and I actually think conservative women has been doing this increasingly. We've seen a lot of just neat trends, I think, of conservative women lean in a little bit more to that fun fashion space and almost reclaiming that very classy, traditional, but the
arts
look,
that were
arts,
traditionally
that
seen as
look and
liberal.
style that really elevates women and elevates the classiness of women. But that's an area that I think we can do even better on. We can just keep leaning in.
I mean, Dana Prune has been doing increasingly Gen Z type content on her social media. And so my first thought was the get ready with me, because I feel like that's such a hard thing when we're younger, when younger professionals, I should say.
Sure.
You don't have a ton of money because, you're starting off and you're kind of building your wardrobe. And I love that Instagram influencers have focused on like capsule wardrobes, because those are going to be with you. And I certainly have some items that I've had my entirety of the time that I've lived in DC, which is nice. But yeah, the get ready with me, give us the brands you're using, and maybe even lean into American made brands, like find those really good ones and share that with the public, because that's going to help the company. It's going to help women who, are patriotic and want to look nice.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? An area where conservative women can lead better?
Probably so many, but I think that maybe piggybacking off that a little bit, I think that we can lead on shopping local, supporting small businesses, knowing where our items are coming from or where they're sourced. And like, that's a tough thing, like squaring that with even what you were just saying about building a wardrobe. I mean, if it's done well, it's often more expensive. And so the cheaper thing is to buy something online. And most of us are guilty of that, of course. But I think that we can lean into like the Etsy's and supporting the small businesses that our friends and neighbors and families are starting, which, is sometimes a really awkward thing because you don't want to like sell to your friends and family. Like I think the negative connotation comes in with multi-level marketing. But there are a lot of great local efforts and small businesses that I think we can lean into.
Absolutely. Well, Janae, thank you for joining us once again on Problematic Women. This has been a joy to have you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Y'all have a great rest of your week. We'll see you back here next Thursday.